All right, guys, you're on the 14th Step, a podcast about addiction and recovery. My name is Mark. I'm a professional counselor and a recovering addict.
My name is Skip. I'm a recovery coach and a recovering addict.
All right, Skip.
What are we going to talk about today?
We have a comment that I think is really interesting, and it gets a good conversation going, and it's an important conversation to have.
I love it.
This is in response to a video that we did titled The Solution to Suffering, which we were talking about maybe why people become addicted.
Yes.
Trying to cover up pain or something like that.
Yes.
And so the comment by this guy, Pete Juneau, who I asked if I could read, and he said
gave
yes.
Full permission.
He said, "Stop making excuses and get tough on people. That is the effective solution." And then we're talking about drug laws, and he said, people hold people accountable in these situations, not necessarily laws, even though laws would be helpful. The laws that are needed are ones that don't make excuses for drug addictions, like homeless encampment, parole instead of jail time, lenient fines. You should not say drug laws are a failure until you can show why drug use has increased or whatever your claim is for laws not working, because we can't confirm your assumption to be correct. Because I was being skeptical about drug laws. So he's basically saying that a better solution would be for more harsh penalties rather than more lenient ones like we're seeing in certain parts of the country where they're focusing on harm reduction stuff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the gist of what he's saying there.
Right. So,
I know. It's a complicated thing.
Well, it's a good discussion because, as you know, it's so easy to lump everybody in together under one umbrella of that it can be solved this way.
Right.
But as you know, with going to meetings and talking about people from different walks of life, every single person is a different story.
That's right.
Something different's going to work for them.
That's right.
It's all nuance on their recovery.
That's right.
And you talk to this guy who just dove into the 12 steps head first. It made a ton of sense. He did all the work and has never touched another drug, and he's 3 years clean and going great. Mm-hmm. Then you got this person over here who has gone through detox and rehab, 5 times, 10 times, and they keep relapsing.
I talk to guys like that all the time.
And they can't figure out why. And then finally they get on let's say a methadone program, and guess what? They get regulated out. Mm-hmm. It helps them, and all of a sudden they're able to work again. They're able to do this, but they are still taking methadone to help those cravings and all that. You know, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And then you got somebody that has to detox because they got caught and they're incarcerated, and they detox in prison, and they're in jail for 5 years, and they're sober that way.
County jails are the number one detox facilities in the country. That's where most people detox.
Oh, can you imagine being sitting in there?
I've heard so many stories about it, and it's terrible. I don't have a strong opinion on what policy should be in place as far as laws go, because that feels like it's over my pay grade sometimes, and you could debate it for forever. But I tend to be skeptical about how effective harsh penalties are for drug possession, and I'm talking about drug use, drug possession, not dealing or like criminal stuff, but just possession and use. And I don't really know. I can't pretend like I know all the reasons why drug use has skyrocketed in the past 40 years or so, but I know that a good 20 years of that, there were very harsh drug laws on the books. There were minimum mandatory sentences. There were people getting 70, 80 years for crack cocaine possession. They were trying to clean up the streets. There were very harsh penalties on even marijuana possession. People were going to prison. And I don't know if anyone can honestly say that it had a great effect on the problem.
Well, it didn't.
Right.
It's gotten worse.
And so I don't know if the laws were ineffective, but I do know that drug use has exponentially increased year after year.
Okay, so common sense, I reduce that down to if somebody wants extremely harsh laws, why would you want that? Because it's a deterrent, right?
That's the whole thing.
Okay, well, if it's drug use has skyrocketed and gotten bigger, then what kind of deterrent is it?
It's not. And it ends up just creating more human suffering by putting people who aren't criminals into the criminal justice system.
And when you go to the extreme of zero tolerance,
how far do you take it?
How far do you take
Right.
it? Because if zero tolerance doesn't fix someone, then what are you going to do?
Right.
Because I just watched this I say this almost every episode. Hey, I just watched this documentary because I watched a lot of stupid documentaries. But when we went to Afghanistan in the early 2000s, over 20 years, we inadvertently created this subculture of heroin addicts.
Yeah.
Men, Afghan men, and it was almost 90% men, husbands, fathers, older boys, were hooked on heroin and living in the streets and the alleyways in Afghanistan, okay? It's rampant because that's where the poppy plants are grown, right? That's the number one place.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We left Afghanistan about a year ago or so,
Right.
and the Taliban is going through the streets with AK-47s and giant trucks and rounding up all of these drug addicts, throwing them in camps.
Yeah.
And basically saying detox, and they're doing classes, and they say they are. It was on camera, right? They're doing all these classes, and guess what? These guys detox and come through the program, or they're dead. And it doesn't get more zero tolerance than that, right? Well, is that what they mean? Because how harsh do you go?
I think that I had a client once who was given a 70-year prison sentence for possession of crack cocaine, and I think he was arrested right in the high point of the war on drugs in the 80s and 90s.
Just say no.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Dare.
Yeah, and he was older, and he still had like 25 years left on his parole. So I don't know. And then you talk about these really lenient places where they hand out needles every day.
That's right. There's an encampment.
Yeah, and they basically sanction drug use. So I don't know if that's any better, really. I think there's got to be some kind of balance. It's a complicated problem.
It is so complicated.
But I don't know if just punishing people is really going to change the root of the problem, which I see as more of a cultural problem.
Well, and let me throw this out there without being too dramatic. Is that not why we're doing this podcast?
That's right.
We're trying to get the word out that the way to do it is not to punish somebody into sobriety or do this, but to try to maybe bring a light on it.
Yeah.
And talk about it is difficult, it is a long process, but it's doable.
This is a problem that is so secret, and I think the reason why there's so much shame, stigma, secrecy, or one of them, is that the laws are what they are.
Right.
And so people don't really want to talk about it. They don't want to get in trouble. And that's one of them. I mean, there's obviously a lot of reasons why someone would hide their drug use. But having a conversation about it at least gets people talking about it. And we can at least have that discussion.
Yeah,
and bring it out into the light.
I agree. And I'm going to throw out another topic, and we can talk about this on a future podcast. Because you said harsh penalties, right? Where does it go? How far do you take it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go the opposite.
Yeah.
This will be a topic for the next time. Let's legalize everything.
That's a really interesting thing. And I think there's some countries that have done it. But of course, you can't compare other countries to the one we're in either.
No. Yeah.
So I think that's a good discussion. If you guys have a comment about what you think should happen to drug laws, or your opinion about harsher penalties or lesser penalties, please leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you. This is a complicated issue, and we want to get a conversation going about it.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.